One between Philly and Boston. Well, it was a bit of a blowout. Tyrese Maxey saying, not this time around. Taking this one around the world for the and one. This one a three-point play to make it, a little out of reach. But how about this? Maxey, again, three. And that's all she wrote. Boston just couldn't keep up this time. Tyrese Maxey having himself an outing, a 29-point night on 11 of 28 shooting, 5 of 12 from three-point land. Meanwhile, another big story of this game, VJ Edgecombe having a 30-point outing. He had scored, 16 in the second quarter alone. He was in and out of this game, but extremely efficient. Hey, Philly said, don't sleep on us yet. We're back. We're joined by CBS Sports NBA analyst John Gonzalez and former 16-year NBA pro Al Harrington. The Sixers coming up big with a response after that blowout loss in Game 1. And Al, we're going to talk about just individual performances in a second because they most definitely need to be acknowledged in this conversation. But outside of individual work, what impressed you most about how Philly responded?
I mean, they really came out and they responded. I feel like, obviously, having Joel out, they had every reason to come in there and kind of just have the attitude like, we'll go after it in Philly. Hopefully the big fella's back. But they were fearless tonight. They came out. I think Paul George definitely helped, got a little vintage Paul George, early in the game. And then you look at, Maxey, obviously you kind of expect him to play at that level, but we got to give the rookie a lot of credit. I mean, he made big shot after big shot. His energy on both sides of the ball, especially defensively, he was coming up with big steals. I really take my hat off to VJ Escom. Like, he played his behind off tonight. And ultimately, I feel like he was the X factor and the reason why they actually won this game.
Yeah, Al's absolutely right. That backcourt was killer tonight for the Sixers. Maxey was great. Edgecombe was great. If we're talking about overall as a team, what surprised me about this is they lose by 32 in Game 1. And Al is right. They had more energy tonight. They had more fight in them. But I want to flag two things here. And this is something that Nick Nurse talked about pregame, where he said they needed to limit turnovers. They had 14 in Game 1. That was more than 3 times as many turnovers as 3. Tonight, just 7 turnovers. And then that 3-point shooting. They only made 4 threes in all of Game 1. Tonight, they make 19 of 39. They shot the absolute lights out, 49%. That'll help you, right? That'll give you a little bit of a boost when you're trying to find some offense. Hey, here's an idea. Knock down some shots on the road. And they absolutely did that tonight. And I think they stunned the Celtics. They certainly stunned me, Kiana.
Yeah, I think they stunned a lot of people. I think maybe people are starting to write off Philly after that blowout that we did see in Game 1. But without Embiid, you guys are talking about it. I mean, Philly did need somebody else to really become a serious factor in this series. And we know what Maxey is capable of. He had himself a night, but can we just take a step back and look at VJ Edgecombe? Did he just announce himself in a huge way with this performance?
I'd say so. I know. I'd say so. I'm just, I've been a big fan of his whole young career. Seeing him at Baylor, the way he played, his mental mentality, the way he approaches the game. I call him like a little bit like Russ, a little bit of Russ, a little bit. He has a little Russ in him. And, he just really took the ball by the horns in this game. He felt like it was opportunity for him to shine, and he shined, with the star of stars, and especially playing in Boston. Boston's a very tough place to play. You got Jason Tatum, you got Jaylen Brown, you got a bunch of good players over there. And, he came in and he responded. He played at a super high level. And like I said, the fact that he was responding with the 3-ball, that's something that he's really not a strong suit of his game. But tonight he let it fly and he made big shot after big shot.
Yeah, that Russ comparison is interesting, right? Because he has that same fearlessness, whether he's, shooting from deep. It's only his second playoff game, right? I mean, it's hard to learn how to play in the playoffs. And he looked like the moment was certainly not too big for him. And as Al mentioned, it's not easy to go on the road when you're a rookie and playing in Boston. That's a tough environment. And I would say, like, the one part of him that is, Russ, like in the fearlessness, they had the in-game interview with him, and he said, I don't care if a bigger guy is coming at me. You're going to have to go through me. I love that about him. I would like to say, though, and I think he demonstrated it tonight, looks like a better shooter already than Russ. Goes and hits 6 of 10 from 3, and they needed all of that. No disrespect to Russ, but like sometimes you don't want Russ cranking threes. And tonight with Edgecombe, I was like, hey, take them all. I mean, he was knocking him down, and he took a blow in the game and looked like he hurt his back and left the game and then came back. That's another thing that I think is sort of comparable to Russ, right? Where you really got to knock that guy out. Otherwise, he's going to come right back at you. And what an incredible performance for those two guys, Edgecombe and Maxey, to go for a combined 59 in a game right after they got blown out. I mean, that's an answer for you.
Yeah, that duo, 59 of the 111 points scored in this one. And then you're talking about VJ Edgecombe, plus 17 when he's not on the floor. That shows just how crucial he was in this game. But, John, do you look at this game as maybe just a bad Celtics night? Or is this a sign that this series has more fight in it than maybe Game 1 suggested to us?
Kiana, you know me well enough, and Al's going to learn this about me. I've watched way too many Sixers games in my life to believe that this is going to be a series. I picked this to be a sweep. They got one on the road. I mean, that's a good result for them, but they haven't beaten the Celtics since 1982. That's a long time ago. I did the math. 4 years? I just did it again in my head. I have a hard time believing that they're going to get really into this series. So yes, it was a combination of they had a really good night and the Celtics didn't. And, Jason Tatum almost goes for a triple double. Jaylen Brown goes for 36. Nobody else showed up. Bad night from Derek White. Sam Hauser couldn't get anything to fall. Peyton Pritchard couldn't get anything to fall. I'm interested to see what Al thought about the Celtics deciding to play drop coverage with Nikola Vucevic, Nikola Vucevic has had a really good career. He's never been a plus defender, and he's getting worse. And so they were just inviting the Sixers, to go to the rim against him. So I thought that was a little bit curious. But I'm texting with my Celtics fan friends after this, and they're like just trashing Jason Tatum. I'm like, what do you want from this guy? He almost goes for a triple-double. Nobody had a good shooting night. He was not the problem tonight. But yes, the Celtics off night for them.
Well, as they say, I mean, this is a miss or make league. And, for either team, like if you make shots, you put yourself in a good position to win. With Jason Tatum tonight, I felt, there was some times where it looked like vintage Tatum, but I think sometimes he was out there defensively. It was the way he actually hurt them. I watched maybe like 4 or 5 clips where, he was the direct reason why either he turned the ball over or he was in drop coverage and not, up on guys, that were, taking wide open shots. But I think that, overall with Philadelphia, if they can hit shots like that, they'll be in this series. But as we know, that's really not their strong suit to play at that high of a clip. And then we also know that the Celtics are going to play better. All of their supporting cast tonight between Derek, Peyton Pritchard, Sherman, none of them really, stepped up and made shots like they normally do. And usually when the ball's flying around and humming, those guys, you can count on those guys to make shots at all times. And just tonight, they just didn't have it, and it's unfortunate, especially in the playoffs, because you're supposed to protect home. But, the way that they played all year and the culture that they play with, I feel like they can go to Philly and they can win both of those games if they do what they're supposed to do and obviously make shots.
Yeah, obviously that's probably the number one thing on their list. But whether it's just maybe an off night for Boston or maybe it was, I don't know, Philly finding a little bit of mojo this series, now going back to Philly, and who knows, they could be feeling themselves. You guys know how this goes. Momentum can go a long way. So, John, I know you might be enjoying that, but we'll just see how it goes. Friday, we'll talk about it and see how this one shakes out. Fellas, as always, thank you guys so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
Well, how about Tyrese Maxey in this series? This series might be split at 1 apiece, but this man's been balling. 50-plus points, 15 or more assists through the first 2 games of a postseason game in Sixers franchise history. He's adding himself to the list among some greats and looking to add on some more as Game 3, that's set for Friday in Philly. A brutal fall for Victor Wembanyama. He's out of the game.